Hey, good evening. I know it's back to back, but you can't make this shit up. Today's BCC meeting I thought was going to be humdrum was an absolute shit show from the get go. And if you'll go watch this on YouTube, go watch this BCC meeting and watch how this thing goes down. Watch very closely Danny and Clay's actions and Boots' actions and what Tony says and what Uriah Matthews says and what's going on in the body language in that room. In fact, the commissioners even talk about the body language. And what's really apparent at the BCC meeting is they do not want the public to know who's really pulling the strings on this puppet show out there. Donna did good today. I'll go into that. But let's kick this shit show of the county sitting with old potato chip bowl head at the head of it. And we'll come back to that. But here's what we got into. And this is who we had today. We had this guy today. He was looking for any way out of anything he could. That's right. Danny Lidwell showed up front and center today. So here's what happened. At a meeting or two ago, and I was at it, a guy named Kevin Crystal made a proposal to the BCC to buy some of the Mossy Head Industrial Park. He made a proposal. They all voted on it and agreed to it. The only thing left was to put the contract out there. And Kevin said, I'm going to do X with the property. And they said, great, that's what we want. So they gave him like a $200 an acre discount. I mean, really not shit, but it became part of the issue by Big Mouth here. But Mr. Crystal just agreed to do what they said. He agreed to put a clause in his contract that other people had not. So the county had gotten way worse deals than what Mr. Crystal said. And he said, if I don't do what I'm going to do with it, you can take it back. And also there's a clause in the restrictions that make it automatic that if he changes the use, he's got to come back to the BCC. But here's what really went down. And they even admit it. So here comes Uriah Matthews, and I'd put a picture of him up, but it ain't worth it. So old powder ass Matthews comes up here and makes sure they know how to spell his name. And he says, basically there've been some rumors, and he got a phone call in the morning. And you know who did these phone calls? The infamous they. Have y'all met them when you've had a 5-year-old? You cornered and said, who did this? They did. Well, where are they? The infamous they that can never be identified. They showed up at the BCC meeting and evidently called the director of the economic development, Uriah Matthews, urine. And he came in there and pissed on Mr. Crystal's parade today. But we never knew what he was told, that supposedly Mr. Crystal was in negotiation with somebody to sell it. So what if he was, if that was allowed? As long as he used it for what it said. The county attorney clearly said there was absolutely no evidence. Even Clay didn't want to admit it, but he got cornered, so he had to give a real advice and say, we don't have any evidence. But Glidewell claimed he had some, but he didn't want to share it with the public, said it wasn't for public consumption. Really, Danny? See, this is where this bullshit has gone to Danny's head. This is where the good old boys think that they're a kingdom and DNA matters. Listen, this was a legal contract and nobody else has ever been treated this way. But Danny sat there and said how he was going to vote before the motion. I'm going to vote no against it. Made Tony retract it. It became a threatening match of what was going to happen in this 2-2. And we need the governor to appoint somebody, because now Glidewell's using this to his advantage, saying, well, if I vote no and Boots votes no, this thing's kicked off for 6 months. Well, Kevin should have sued your ass if that happened, because your attorney just said. But now Danny knows better than the attorneys, except when Danny wants to lean on the attorneys. This was bullshit, Kevin. And this was the man behind it, him and urine. And Matthews was the guy without the educational requirements that even the school superintendent, and we'll address something on him later, the school superintendent voted to hire Mr. Matthews, who did not meet the minimum educational requirements. They said to hell with it, hired him anyway. And I think Danny and Boots were in on it. So Danny and Urine had clearly had a conversation, and then it came out that some commissioners knew what was going on and some didn't. And that was the staff's fault. And Clay said it was their fault. But this is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. They end up tabling this after a whole bunch of stuff. And that went on, and it just became apparent that what happened was somebody realized that Mr. Crystal got a good deal, kind of like, and then they wished they had done it. So they played the trump card. But the question is, who are these infamous people? And how did Glidewell justify himself stopping a business deal on a rumor that he wouldn't share with the public? This man wants to operate out of the sunshine, although he said he was happy to tell Mr. Crystal. But Mr. Crystal said, if y'all know something or making accusations against me, just go ahead and say it right here in public. But Danny didn't want to, but he said he'd vote no based on what he was told. Well, who told you, Danny? You should have to tell us. You're an elected official. So we get on for that, and so they end up tabling Mr. Crystal's issue. And the whole thing is just horrible. Watch what Boots says. He's reading the room. Who's he reading? His own staff and developers and other people out there like Clay? Boots, you're reading the wrong people. If you're reading Danny, he's clearly not taking this into sunshine territory. He wants the issues hid. Mr. Crystal didn't want them hid. Tony didn't want. Anderson made a motion to approve it. Tony realized they'd done the wrong thing. And in his credit, Anderson made a new motion to which Glidewell threatened to vote no against it and put the pressure on Boots. But we all saw Clay running the show there, as usual. There's lots of whispering between Danny and Clay and all that. And it's just wrong. But what happens next is really. So Donna gets up there and does good, but she throws them a curveball. And I want you to go watch what Danny's ass does. Danny gets up there. And Donna says, now, if you need an update on what happened a few years ago, there was a grand jury. And these people decided in the findings that the commissioners were too involved in the daily business of the county. And they have used that as a lynching spot to make the staff like Clay and the administrator, only that I believe right now it's their claim that the county cannot say, the county commissioners can't say anything directly or ask any questions directly of the county staff about what's going on an issue, because the only people that report to them directly are the county attorney, which we have an interim, who's out there doing what's in his best interest. He doesn't want a full-time job because then he'd be held responsible for what he's doing. Plus, he's made about $500,000 off of us, I believe, in the last 2 years in billing. Why would he leave? Get back to that in a second. Danny doesn't want us to know. So Donna, the only three people that the BCC, with the way they have their hierarchy set up, the only three people are the county administrator, county attorney, and the TDC. Well, we don't have a TDC director. Remember that debacle? And we don't have a real administrator. We have Tony Cornhole, and he's cornholing us left and right because he's not smart enough to have that job, and they all know. So Donna throws this out, and she says, well, if only three people report to us and we don't have a county attorney, I've done some research on my own. And boy, the other commissioners do not like that, neither does Clay. Why? Because Clay doesn't want them to hire an attorney. Then he's out of the job. He's been busy scripting everything in the county attorney's office just the way he wanted. So Donna goes on to tell us that she realizes that there's 7 or 8 or 9 candidates have applied to the county attorney's job. And Danny starts to whip out that grand jury. You're involved in day-to-day operations. She goes, no. Has HR informed any of you about this? And who screened them? Well, HR didn't feel like they went up to snuff. So let's stop right there. Commissioner Johns has asked, how come we haven't hired a county attorney when we hired Clay supposedly for 90 days the first time 2 years ago? Now, they're all buds with Clay, if you're new to Walton County, as the toilet flushes, but they recycle garbage. And so they immediately turn to HR, and who do they turn to? They turn to their county administrator who'd been fired, Gary Madison. Somewhere I got a picture of him in an orange jumpsuit. He was fired and he got an HR job. We don't know how he got his job, but listen to what Danny says. Ms. Johns, you're interfering with day-to-day operations. No, Danny, the county attorney is one of the few positions that reports directly to the commissioners. Now, I believe that the commissioners have every legal right to make the department heads report to them too, because policy and law enforcement and following ordinances is not day-to-day business. Those are the requirements, as Tony Anderson's already stated, that they're sworn to enforce that. And the only mechanism they have to enforce it right now is to ask an interim person, or we don't have a real head of director of the TDC the way it's described on paper anymore. They split up all the duties. So they don't have any mechanism to hold their own staff responsible. So Donna asked the question, how come y'all don't know about this? Do y'all know about this? They're all like, no. Why haven't you been told? They called Madison, who got fired a long time ago, and all kind of controversy. That's a Trey Nick daily business. Him and Scott Brandon's jobs were created. And where's Scott? At legislature. We don't know how he was hired either. But Danny threatens Donna that she's interfering, and Boots says she's doing the wrong thing because she called these applicants and say, well, did you ever have a conversation with the county? And the applicants say no. So here's the question. Danny thinks HR, it's none of Donna's business, and HR should be screening. Well, who the hell in HR? Who the hell is screening for us to hire a county attorney, saying these people aren't? Who is? I mean, who in HR knows enough about Juris Doctorate degrees and what county court is? Is it Clay, who's been in a position for 2 years? Who's been advising HR not to tell the commissioners that they had 7, 9 attorney applicants? Danny does not want that talked about, and Donna did the right thing today. She called him on it. He scared her a little bit with that grand jury shit. That grand jury shit was all scripted anyway. The grand jury said that the commissioner interfered with the hiring of one employee who'd already been a county employee. Okay, before with Larry Jones, they interfered. But somehow the state attorney's office does not want to come investigate whether all the creation that Trey Nick and them did, creating Scott Brannon's job, no advertisement, no competition, rehiring directly Gary Madison out of Trey's office and put him as an assistant director of the HR, comes to every county meeting. Go look him up. So go read his arrest record. Go read Scott's ethics convictions, and why was an ex-commissioner convicted on ethics violations hired as our county's legislative liaison? You cannot make this bullshit up. So this BCC, this vote of 4, why haven't you hired a county attorney? And who's driving this freaking bus? Danny's letting the lawyers drive it, and he's running the dirty Clay, who he said before he went to office was one of the worst things that ever happened to this county. We got a problem in this county, and it starts with the name letter A, and it's called Atkinson. And somebody needs to do something about it, Governor. We need it. And Donna's going down. Donna, you know what, Donna? Here's what you do. Danny doesn't want you in the day-to-day operations. Donna, you go to the state and say, we need an audit. And that you need to say that you can't ask the staff if Sandestin's in compliance. So you'll tell the state that you have evidence as the commissioner that you need to talk to the state about. Give them a call, Donna, and tell them that you got all the information. Ask them to issue a notice of violation, and then Danny can watch the staff handle the day-to-day operations of running the NOPC to determine how they're going to bring it into compliance. Do what Danny says. Don't ask the staff anything that you think's interfering. If you think they're not following the law, go to the state, Donna. That's what Danny wants. He's scaring you. Don't get involved down here. Okay, then go up. But get involved. Ask the question, why don't we have a county administrator? Why don't we have a county attorney? Who's running the staff? Who's holding Matt Carpenter responsible? And why is Matt Carpenter the president of a nonprofit, the Freeport? What's that shit going on at Freeport? Is that the Freeport? Is that the same place the county has buildings? Somebody sent me that today. So let's get off the BCC, but you got to go watch that thing. You know what else happened today? The school called Dan Curry, who's thinking about running for District 1 against Trey, Nick, and Boots. They called him today and said they didn't need him as a volunteer coach anymore. He didn't write him a letter. Freeport Middle School. So we need to ask Russell Hughes. Yo, Russell, what's the policy that somebody says they want to run for office? Do they get, what's up with that, Russell? Oh, I'm sorry. What's the policy? Another crook. What's the policy? What's going on here? Why is Dan Curry's services as a volunteer coach? I guess Dan for years has been doing that for Freeport Middle School. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me put somebody up here because even Danny wants to know why are you firing a coach, and why can't you put it in writing? Why Mr. Curry, his political views, his freedom of speech, is that why y'all won't put it in writing? Have y'all seen those texts? That ain't good on the Alan Osborne show. We got so many questions driven by Danny and these people. It's just ridiculous. It's out there in outer space. You can't justify it. But don't worry. He's in Tallahassee protecting your interests, and that's probably what he looks like tonight. Out there in the spaceship we know as Walton County. On the Alan Osborne, you can't make this shit up. School board involved in free speech and firing of volunteer coaches. Danny and Boots don't think Donna should ask about who's doing the county attorney and who is screening them. Clay, is he screening the people he'll have to work with later when he runs corruption? You can't make this shit up on the Alan Osborne show. Go tune in and watch your BCC. Donna, go to the state. Danny says that they got to do the right thing. Okay, make Danny prove it. That's how it was on the Alan Osborne show. You can't make this shit up, but you can unelect it. You can tell your neighbors that this shit's real. Why don't they challenge it? Why don't they prove that they've got the NOPC, Donna? Just ask your staff for it on the next Alan Osborne show. We'll see you next time. Y'all keep them straight. They can't keep themselves straight here.